Colin Clague,
Thank you.
welcome to Tasty Humans. I got the pronunciation of your surname right, so we're in a good place.
Good start.
Tasty Humans, powered by Watson, sitting here in the lovely Media One Hotel. You're definitely someone who has reached the top of their game as a chef, correct? Would you say that?
No.
No?
I mean, obviously, I've done all right.
Yeah.
I've opened some fairly iconic restaurants. But no, I'm definitely not up there. It depends what your judge is. If you're wanting 3 Michelin stars, that's not what I do. That's for other people. But, I've done some very good restaurants. I'm very happy with the career, yeah.
So before we sort of get into what the names of these restaurants, because a couple of them are huge, especially in Dubai. One of them is an institution. I'm sure there are people watching this that definitely know who you are. We met half an hour ago, and in the last half an hour, I've managed to cover so many different topics. It's great, but so as I love talking to chefs because they're very creative, they're absolutely nuts, very colourful characters. Where did it all begin for you then?
I'm from the Isle of Man. That's where it began. My mother is a qualified chef. She didn't go down that path. She had kids instead, so she ended up in banking and all that, and school meals. But growing up on the Isle of Man with all the vegetables my father had, an allotment, the fish is, it's all fantastic. So we had amazing food growing up, and my careers teacher basically said, you're never going to go to university, Carl, are you? So think about something. And yeah, sure enough, I always wanted to be a chef.
What made your careers teacher say you're never going to university?
I had a good laugh at school, yeah. I mean, I'm one of those people that's learnt far more outside school than I ever did in it. I'm definitely not stupid or anything like that. But school was not for me, really.
Yeah, I know that feeling.
Yeah.
And so that made you sort of look at culinary?
Yeah, then I went to the catering college on the Isle of Man, and as soon as I finished, however much I love the Isle of Man, as soon as I finished, I was 17, moved to London. So that's...
Whereabouts in London did you go first?
Early 80s. The first job was at the Strand Palace Hotel on the Strand, purely because it had staff accommodation, and I'd never really lived in England or... been on escalators or any of that sort of And the staff accommodation was right behind it in Covent Garden. So it was fantastic. Central London. The local was the Duke of Wellington on the corner of the bridge there, and fantastic.
And what was the Strand like? Good, busy, good first apprenticeship, or
the hotel was great. I made some fantastic friends who I'm still in touch with today. Food-wise, it wasn't great. It was a Trust House 40, it was tin stuff and all that sort of. So it wasn't the high-end stuff I do today. But it was good, perfect for me to settle into London. I'd never been in a big city before. I come from a village. But yeah.
So what was the role that got you into where you are today? Where do you think was there an early turning point where you went from just being on the line to like, I've actually got the capabilities to I want to lead a kitchen.
No, I don't think it's anything like that. You always want to progress, and this is going back to the 80s. Mm-hmm. And I'm sure you've spoke to many chefs. London in the 80s in a kitchen was very hard. It was violent, misogynistic, everything. Not saying there were bad times. The character building, if you like. So if you're on the bottom, everything comes down to you. All the shit comes down. So the only way is to work as hard as you can. So to get promoted. So there's somebody under you. In those days, you started as a third commis, then a second, first, demi, and all that. Now you come out of college, you're a commis chef within 6 months because there's no chefs out there anymore. You're, a demi chef, and it's like three years after if you ever went to college, you're like looking for head chef's jobs, and it's bad.
Do you see a big change in that then?
Yeah.
Do you actually look at people coming through and just think, like the cliched statement, you don't know the half of it? Like, is it completely different mindset?
Totally. I mean, now everything is fast tracked. They want to do the foams and all the fancy stuff, but they can't fillet a fish or bone a chicken. They've totally, cut that out. And there's many reasons for that. I mean, don't want to get, you said no politics, but Thatcher got rid of home economics at school in Britain, and now nobody really knows how to cook.
Yeah, we did home economics at school.
Yeah, I did. Well, I was on the Isle of Man. I was the first one. Boys weren't allowed to do it, and I kicked up a fuss, and eventually they allowed me. Yeah, but I was the first one. Like, yeah.
No, that's crazy.
Yeah, but nobody knows how to cook anymore.
What do you define as cooking then? Like, so when you say, I love this question because it's like when people say no one knows how to do it, instead of zoning in on that, what?
No, I think like, I've got two sons. Ewan is at university now. Niall's still with us, but Ewan, he's got like a standard eight dishes. He can, young lady comes around or a mates come around, he can bang out, half a dozen dishes that are really good and impress people. That's all you need to keep healthy. So you don't have to go and buy packaged foods and processed and everything, because it's just so unhealthy. And now it's not like when I was growing up. I mean, now you have to have two members of the family working. You do, and neither has time to cook. So everybody jumps into the processed food department or something like that. And that's just bad for the whole country. That's bad for obesity and health and everything like that.
So what is your speciality cuisine then, and how did that get developed? I mean,
I don't know. I really don't. There's two sides. Okay, so obviously the groundbreaking one, I suppose, that we did with Zuma.
Yeah.
So that's Japanese. I obviously opened another restaurant called Itsu before this. Itsu was the first kaiten sushi, the conveyor belts.
Okay.
With a fantastic chef called Mark Gregory. That was in Walton Street in London. So that was the very first one in London. Yeah. It was the original site of Walton's. Do you remember Walton's? Oh. The IRA blew it up. It had seats for 80, but if you speak to everybody now, there was about 500 people in that.
When was that? Like,
early 80s, I think.
I don't know. Early 80s, I was like.
But the kitchen in there, I remember the kitchen in Walton's. The cold section was on top of the freezer, and when the pastry chef needed to get the ice creams out, you had to lift the whole thing up. It was chaos, but yeah, that was great. So that Japanese side to it, but since I've been in the Middle East, I mean, don't include 1999 when I did the Burj Al Arab. I came back in 2007 for Zuma. I think the passion for Middle Eastern food is unbelievable. Food, it is as good as Japanese. It's as good as French, Italian, anything. It just needs to be put out, and so many people just think Middle Eastern, Levant, whatever you want to call it, food is Lebanese. Now, there's nothing wrong with Lebanese food, but there's so much more to it than, the Persian side of it, the Turkish. And I mean, tomorrow I go to Uzbekistan, so that's another great food capital.
And how did you, did it become an obsession, this particular cuisine? And the reason I ask is because Zuma, come on, Zuma is an institution.
Yeah.
When I
iconic.
Completely, like I'll be honest, I hadn't really paid too much attention to the one in London because at that time I was very much nightlife driven, so I wasn't really in the let's say the restaurant game. When I came here and was started in Jumeirah, Zuma, it's always there, right in the top tier.
But when we opened in 2007. In the DIFC, everybody was, you're stupid. You're absolutely stupid. Now, I'd like to take credit for it, but it's not. It's Mr. Warney and Rainer Becker. And they said, no, we're going to do it in the DIFC. And now, everybody that wants to open a new restaurant is, let's see if we can get into the DIFC. But the rent is astronomical now. It's ridiculous. So it makes it difficult. But when we first did it, everybody thought we were daft. But now it's the only place probably in Dubai that you're guaranteed a good lunch and dinner trade, which is huge.
Well, it's so consistent.
Yeah.
And so what do you think? So again, I've had people on this podcast that again have led these very iconic brands here in Dubai. And I think the thing with Dubai is that the competition is so vast, but also I'd say the standard and the lack of loyalty that people actually have to their, let's say, quote unquote, favorite places. So the new thing opens, everyone goes over to that side of the city, and then that thing dies. And there's been so many concepts and brands that have come and gone to sit at pretty much the top for the best part of now, 15, 16 years. So what do you think it takes as a restaurant for people that are going to, watch this, hopefully? What does it take as a team, as a kitchen, as a chef, as a leader to get it there and keep it there? Because we all want to do it.
Well, everybody sees it, and I want one of those.
Yeah,
it's easier said than done.
Yeah, exactly.
There's two things. One is consistency, and then you need somebody like Rainer Becker, who is without doubt probably the biggest influence on my career. He was my not first head chef, but when I worked at the Park Hyatt in Sydney, he came there. He was the youngest executive chef in Hyatt at that time. Very raw. English was funny as well, but anyway. So that's where I met Rainer, in Sydney in Australia. And then he rang me up years later and said, let's do a Zuma. I said, yeah, fantastic. So he is on top of everything. I'll tell you a story. He came in. I was in the kitchen one day in Dubai. He came in and tore strips off me, bollocked me, because one of the light bulbs outside wasn't working. I'm in charge of the kitchen. And there's general managers for that. But he still tore strips off me because I didn't notice it. And that's what he is really, really good at. He sees things, especially the sounds on the music. Lighting there are big things for him, and all the details about the ceramics and everything like that. So, and the people he employs to run the place, whether it was me, whether it was Reef, and Pavel, they all live here. They're there, and Rainer comes regularly, usually around the time of Formula One in Abu Dhabi, but that's another story. To check on things and really keep an eye. So the consistency's always been there. And you just look at some of the people that have gone through Zuma, whether it's, Jimmy, the bar, he ran the bar operations for years. As I say, Pavel and Reef, Mario and all these really top quality people that have gone on to maybe bigger and better things for themselves. But that brand is always a good...
Well, is it one of these places where they just won't compromise on their standard, no matter who the person
that's exactly, yeah.
So it's where, I suppose in this day and age, I've worked in a couple of places that have that in it, where you don't question what you're being told, you do it.
Yeah.
And because of the nature of the brand itself, there's a couple of things I went into at a very early age where you didn't even have the position to question it. But you realize looking back at it that their unwavering sort of focus on it is what is just driving all of it. You can't change it. Everything has to be perfect. Everything is set in stone. You kind of don't have an opinion. I mean,
I look at it now. What Zuma was like when we first opened it in 2001 in London. We started with about 15 chefs. I said, Rainer, this is nowhere near enough. Because let's wait. 2 days later, you don't have enough chefs. It was that
proper hospitality opening.
We winged it. There's no doubt about it. We winged it. He says, all right, how much does the chicken cost time? Well, okay, we'll add £2 on for sauces. Let's make it 15 quid. We really were a bit raw in that respect. You could ask Rainer, I'm sure, as well. Did we ever expect it to be a successful? I mean, let's be honest, there was no Japanese person involved in it. Rainer, I was there, chef. There was a couple of guys on the sushi counter, like Yoshi-san, but that was it. So we were quite expecting to get pilloried, I suppose. But no, it just went from strength to strength. But when I worked there, so obviously when I left, there was Dubai, Istanbul, New York, London, and now that they're everywhere, and that is consistency. The good thing about Zuma, you can eat in London but any of the other countries, and the consistency is there, and that's what you want.
And do they do a lot of is there a lot of succession planning and training from within, or do they bring in? Do they subscribe to the knowing what they're good at, what they're not good at? So let's go get the good guy or lady and bring them in, put them in position, support them, and let them do their thing, and we learn from them. What's the cultural strategy like on the inside of a place like this?
Well, I did 10 years. Pavel probably did 15.
Which speaks a lot in itself.
There's people there that in Dubai now that were there in 2007. They look after their staff.
Yeah.
Which is great. And now what is happening now with all the Mykonoses and all these summer seasons, and there's the ones in the Swiss Alps or the French Alps, wherever they are. So there's extra staff there to do these seasonal work, and so you got the chance of travel, which is great for a lot of people. You know what you're going to get. Why would you leave? I mean, financially wise and career wise, was it good for me to leave? Probably not.
Mm-hmm.
But it was the best thing I ever did, because, I got bored. The only reason I got bored coming up with new recipes, soy sake mirin. It was just like, I need something more than this, which is why the Arabic Middle Eastern is far more interesting.
So then what came next? So you got bored.
Got bored, yeah. Well, after 11,
bored at Zuma.
I think after 11 years,
it's a brilliant statement.
And I would say 60-70%, probably 60-70%. And this is a sign of a good restaurant. 60 or 70% of the dishes are untouchable there.
Yeah.
There were some of the ones we've been there since, 2001. The spicy beef, the soft shell crab, all those ones that the lamb. They can never be touched. Because if you go in and say, we've taken spicy beef well, we did actually, I digress. They took the chocolate, melted chocolate lava cake off in London. And then they just had to keep it on. It's not on the menu. It's just called a special chocolate because they're not on the menu. It's there.
Yeah.
That just sells.
Must be a very difficult place to add.
You do the season stuff, and then you get some great ingredients from Japan, which certainly over here has really got far better than my time. I mean, I see the posts of Zuma, what they get from Japan now is phenomenal. We never had it in those days, but no, it's best job probably the best job I ever had. Yeah.
Fantastic. Yeah. But so you got bored, and then you were like, right, I've had enough. I need something new. And what came next?
So then I joined Caprice Holdings.
Okay.
So that's very British, So we opened the Ivy and the Rivington Grill and all these places here. That was fantastic. But they were tied in with Jumeirah Restaurants. So Jumeirah had
Jumeirah Restaurant Group, Emma Banks, yeah.
So that was a bit difficult because obviously I knew what Caprice wanted, and then Jumeirah had their own way of doing things. So
they certainly do.
Yeah. So that didn't work for me, and I left, and maybe a year later the whole agreement got tore up because yeah.
So do you think that was? I mean, I had a great time in Jumeirah. It's the first job that I had when I came here. I was here to run 360. But coming from a nightlife background, there was a friction in, we're here to do a club, but you don't really have the rules in place to allow me to do it because it's controlled chaos.
Yeah.
And the minute there was any type of chaos, everything was really under the microscope. So when it came to the Ivy, Rivington and stuff like that, was that a sort of similar thing, which was that what Caprice want, but Jumeirah are not allowing... No, that's actually maybe not allowing is not the right way to put it, but
I think the Rivington was different. The Rivington was one of the best restaurants this town has ever seen, in my opinion. It was really what everybody wanted. It's your Sunday lunch. It really was fantastic British food, great. There's obviously the suppliers really up their game, and you got the best of British ingredients flown out. It was really, really fantastic. The Ivy was a different kettle of fish because it's iconic. There's certain dishes you can't touch, and obviously when Jumeirah started to put their own dishes on that had nothing to do with the history or anything, and it became more like just a normal hotel restaurant, which even the head of Jumeirah in them days, Gerald Lawless, said, Mr. Lawless said, we do fantastic hotels, but terrible restaurants. So that's what it became. That's probably not why it's here anymore. Because look at the success of the Ivy now, that they're rolling it out from satellite kitchens.
Well, it's changed a lot.
No, the original Ivy is still in Soho, but then they've got all these ones in Greenwich and all that sort of stuff.
Well, it's become very colourful. If I remember the Ivy in Soho, it was quite... I think, I went there once, and it was just... And its hook was, home-cooked food done really, really well.
Yeah.
And then said it came here, and the Ivy was here, which was not quite the same, but still good. And then that closed down. But then the Ivy that's now in the UK is flowers and,
Yeah. But also now that it's just rolled out and it's making an absolute fortune. It's obviously Richard Kering knows his business plan. But there must be 20, 30 in Britain now, and they have centralised kitchens that produces the vast majority of sauces and all that to keep it consistent. And, I still make today when I'm at home the shepherd's pie from the Ivy. It's just such a great recipe. And I go to these Ivies around town. I was visiting my son, for example. Really done really well. So it's a great concept.
No, great endorsement.
Yeah.
So after that was
Caprice.
Royer?
No. Jason Atherton in Singapore.
Okay. Just you've been everywhere.
Yeah. So that was great. So obviously Jason and I opened Pollen. Very difficult location. I mean, Jason is probably one of the best British chefs around. Cracking lad. And what he's doing here now with his restaurant in Grosvenor House is, if there is going to be a 3 Michelin star restaurant in this town, it'll be Rowan 45. Yeah.
Okay. What makes you say that? You're not a Michelin.
No, I don't.
Fan.
No, I definitely don't. There's restaurants here that probably, in France and that have stars, and that in France and England they wouldn't. It's just so the consistency has gone, in my opinion. It's not something I ever strive for or want.
Was it Marco Pierre White gave his back?
Yeah, Marco gave his back. Yeah,
I met him a couple of times.
Yeah, interesting lad. I could tell stories about him as well. But
very dark sense of humour.
But with Jason, Jason's always wanted 3 stars, and I think he'll get it here, and it would get it back in Britain as well. It's that restaurant in Grosvenor House is phenomenal. Okay. Really, anyway, it's to die for. So yeah, we did that, and very, very difficult. So it was in Gardens by the Bay, Pollen, which is the 2 greenhouses, for want of a better word.
I'm not familiar with.
It's phenomenal. But for want of a better word, we're trying to do 1, 2 Michelin stars food in a garden centre. So it probably wasn't the right time or the right thing, but it was a great experience. Again, very, very difficult because you're only allowed, I think, 4 or 3 foreigners per outlet, and everybody else is Singaporean, and the Singaporeans didn't have to do the hours that you were doing. So, I'm doing 17, 18-hour days, and they're doing 8. It was tough.
Yeah.
So then after that, we did Kabara. So basically, Kabara got Restaurant of the Year twice and Chef of the Year, all that sort of stuff. It was before its time. It was a modern Arabic, Levantine, whatever you call it, restaurant in the Wafi. Definitely wrong location, but it was iconic. If you speak to Sam, food diva, she'll say it's one of the greatest memories of food she's ever had and all that sort of stuff, which was phenomenal. And people still ask for it now. So that's the dream, to come back and do another Kabara or type of. It was amazing. Where I said I felt constrained in the way that I could do the Japanese food. Anything Ryan has said, but it's very difficult, to get different ingredients. When you've got, and I did sort of like, North Africa, so you could do all the way around up to Turkey, coming into right down to Saudi, Iran, Iraq, everywhere. I mean, some of the sauces I took from halfway down Africa. But whatever we wanted to do, we could do it. There was the shackles were off, and it was fantastic. And I had some, in a lot of ways, I think I'm a genius in this respect, because I filled the kitchen with Syrians, Egyptians, Moroccans, and it was just like, show me what your grandmother cooks, and all that sort of stuff. They'd bring me stuff, and it was like, that tastes out of this world. You can't serve it and charge what we needed to charge. So then it was just about lightening it, making it pretty, still keep the authenticity, which again brings us back to what Reiner always said at Zuma, authentic but not traditional. And that's how we did. And that's exactly what we did at Ruya as well. So
I can see when you actually sort of talk about how creative that moment was, you sort of completely light up in kind of reminiscing about, like you say, the shackles are off.
Yeah.
We can do what we want. We can create what we want, and bringing in the people to do it is...
Coming back to it, school, I was never going to do anything. But history, I was good at. You know, history was not... That was a walk in the park. I was going to get an A without even trying, because it interests me. When I had free time, I'd read history books. I still do. And I always wanted to be an archaeologist.
Okay.
But I wasn't clever enough. I didn't... You know, maths and all that, you need to get into to study these things. But then now, with Zuma and certainly Kibara and Ruya, you know, where you can read old cooking books, you know, 150, 200 years old, and take those dishes that they've been making for 1,000 years and reinterpret them without losing their authenticity. It's just...
So you have a massive passion for the research side.
Oh, yeah.
Because...
Yeah.
It's something that's interested you from the word go.
Yeah. I mean, when you do something with somebody's national dishes, like once with Ruya, the owner of Ruya was a guy called Rasim Bey. He was obviously quite, old, but a huge passion for Turkish food. And we were over there, we were doing a preliminary looking around, and he brought me a picture of the keskek, which is the champagne, it's the cheddar cheese, it's the national dish recognized by the, whatever they're called, you know, of Turkey. Mm-hmm. And it's gruel. There's no other word for it.
Gruel.
It's gruel.
Yeah.
It's basically a porridge made from lamb neck and barley. It tastes fantastic.
Yeah.
But God, it looks ugly, you know.
Yeah.
So I want this on the menu. It's like, not a chance, mate. Not a chance, you know. Next day, there's another photo. The same dish, but a different type of thing. And he just kept it. And then, my friend Umut, he said, please, for God's sake, he's never going to shut up. Just please put it on the menu. So we did. And to this day, it's one of my favorites. I mean, we totally reinvented it, but keeping, you know.
So when it comes to reinvention, because in this particular trade, you know, everyone's looking for the new way to do something. Like, how do you know sort of what to change, what not to change, what to evolve, what, you know, the risk taking where you're going to take something traditional and essentially redo it, you know, there's, because people know what to expect, there's a way that, because some places get it wonderfly right, and some places you go there and you're like, I don't know who has attempted to try this.
Yeah.
But so, how do you define that process?
If whatever restaurant, would say, for example, Ruya, if a Turkish person came into Ruya and tried something and knew exactly what it is, it might look different, or, you know, but they have to know this is, you know, we don't change it so much, but we might lighten it up a little bit. We might cook it in a different way, but it's still authentic in all its parts, just rearranged slightly different to make it more presentable, to make it prettier, I suppose.
Okay.
Yeah.
What's some of the most rebellious stuff you've done with cuisines, where you've just gone, right, I'm going to change all of this and see what I can come up with?
No, I would never. I'd never, you know, because you still had to remember. I mean, one of the dishes that people still ask for, we did lobster kibbeh. You know, we made the kibbeh in Kibara, and we stuffed it, you know, with like braised lobster and everything like that. And we just couldn't keep up. Another one was manti. Again, Rasim Bey said he wanted manti on the menu. Manti are tiny little dumplings like ravioli. But, I mean, traditionally they say you can get 12 in a tablespoon. You know, it's served at weddings and stuff. And, you know, some big lads in the kitchen, to getting all these guys to make, you know, ravioli 1 centimetre square is a real pain in the arse.
That
it really
sounds like
it's hell.
Yeah.
And each portion must have like 25. So it's time consuming. So I said, there's no way this is going to put us, you know, it's going to put us in the shit. And, but he's a very, bless him, he's passed on away now, sadly. But he was very forceful in that. He was going to get it, you know. So anyway, we put it on. And the first hour of every Ruya, everybody comes in, from the head chef to the pastry chef. Everybody just makes manti. You know, then you freeze them. And they still run out by the end of the night. It's one of those get it while you can type of thing.
Oh, fantastic.
That was a nightmare.
To be honest with you, rolling Paris amounts of 1 centimetre ravioli. Sounds like you start working there and you just go...
Yeah. It's, and you got big lads who, with, a bit ham-fisted, and it's difficult. I mean, in Istanbul, the restaurants that Rasim Bey and Umut had, they had, and this isn't being sexist, 2 or 3 little old ladies who could, their fingers were so quick. They could make 2 or 3 times as many as a very good chef easily. Yeah, they're like rockets. They don't even look.
Brilliant.
Yeah.
I was going to ask. I like asking this question of chefs because I wasn't one. I once trained in a company where I had to go through the kitchen for 2 weeks from kind of senior manager. They put you for 2 weeks in each department, and it was an absolute disaster. Where I'd been a bartender and I could do a dispense bar, busy restaurant, nail it. I was very proud of those moments when I was younger. Went into the kitchen, absolutely clueless.
Yeah.
The coordination, the tickets, the timing, all of it. Like I cannot stress how much I messed it up. I got through it where they just said, you really gave it your best shot, but seeing as you're training not to be a chef, we have found what you're not good at. So I was going to ask, like, how have you always dealt with the relationship between the kitchen and the front of house? Because I believe that there is a big lack of understanding from the front of house managers about what's going on in a kitchen.
Oh, yeah.
And the reason I talk about my experience there is it made me realize that I was 28 at the time and I wanted to phone up numerous head chefs that I'd worked with in the past and say, I'm really sorry for how I conducted myself over the line because now I get it,
Yeah. I mean, my wife is a teacher, and when I see how hard she works, I want to go back and apologize to all the teachers that taught me at school for being an arse, basically.
But how have you sort of managed that relationship with front of house managers? Because it's always one can't survive without the other, but there's 2 very different things going on.
Totally. The way I've always, I changed a lot when I moved to Australia, because I'd come up through the 80s in London, and it was really hard. Fantastic, I loved it. But it was insanity. There was, violent or whatever you want to call it. Go to Australia.
What do you mean by violent? So, because it's the second time you've said it. Like, I mean,
you got pans thrown at your head. You got kicked. You got punched. Yeah, it was. I mean, you couldn't.
You can't do that now.
Absolutely not. In fact, you can't do that now. You can't even
though you want to. Do you know what I mean? You can't do it now.
But it's what's it? Career building, I suppose.
It's definitely character
building. That's the word I was looking for. But then I went to Australia, and I get there and I'm like a sous chef level, and I'd come up the hard way. And I get to Australia, I said, right, I'm going to start giving out what I've taken for all this time. And the Aussies are, mate, you can't do that, And they went, so living in Australia for 11 years or whatever it was, I think mellowed. I think that's the best way. So when I came back, I'm far more understanding than was when I left London in the 80s. With front of house, I couldn't do their job. There's no doubt about it.
Oh, that's very interesting.
I can't talk to customers, and I find when you got to go and talk to table 16. Why? Well, they want to talk to you. Did they like the food? Yeah. Okay, then I'll talk to them. If they hated it, it's like, oh, okay, no. So I definitely couldn't do their job. I think it's 2 sides of a different coin.
You've hit the nail right on the head there, which is when. To look the customers in the eye is, this is what I did for years. This was my thing. But the thing is that you go back to the kitchen and you say to the chef, look, they've said, this is it. Tell them that. And you're like, well, it's not going to work like that.
And now so many kitchens are open kitchens. You just have to go,
you go out and tell them. Yeah. You know what I mean?
Yeah, now it's just, you recook the dish and apologize and would you like something else? But yeah, no, I definitely couldn't do it. And, when the kitchen goes down, when it goes down. And the waiters have to, the managers in the front have to go around and sweet talk everybody, you know.
Do you know what I found?
But it's usually their fault that we've gone down in the first place.
Well, yeah, because the way that a kitchen goes down is when the seating of a restaurant is inconsistent.
Exactly,
And you're being double and, and people get double, triple sat and suddenly all the tickets come in at the same time. And this is where the front of house don't understand what it's like to be in the kitchen. So they're just looking at chefs going, where is it? But I think that the one thing I would say that you say to customers, tell them the truth.
Yeah.
You tell someone the truth, they have very little space to go.
Yeah.
You start to try and, let's say, BS them, that they pick up on it. Just say, listen, it's super busy, it's slowing down, it's going to be 20 minutes, can I get you a drink? If they're not happy, they're not happy, but at least it's honest.
Yeah, and the people front of house have got to try and bring them back. I mean, I always remember we had a friend of mine, Shab. She was running Zuma as well. And she'd come in the kitchen sometimes and she'd just put a glass of wine in front of me on the pass. I'm going, that usually meant, calm down, because it's going to get ugly. You're really going to lose your rag in a minute.
Yeah, you know when it's
exactly.
Coming. Yeah.
I didn't ask for a glass of wine. No, but you are going to need it because you're going to go mental. And when there's like 300, 400, 500 people, it's just.
Oh, when a kitchen, let's say, goes down. Everyone knows the term in the industry.
Yeah.
When the kitchen goes down, it's very difficult because you know that the minute it happens, when as a manager you walk into the kitchen, you see all the tickets in the printer and everything. You see all the tickets on the rail, and you're thinking, right, okay, we're at that moment you're going into it, and you're like, this is going to be a good hour and a half.
You remember Mezzo in Soho?
I do, yeah.
So I opened Mezzo with. I was upstairs. Chris Galvin was down. Fabulous chef.
It's a great place.
Yeah, downstairs.
Yeah.
And when we first opened it, we practiced. You practice for 50 of your mates, 100 of your mates, 150 of your mates. That was it. And the first day we did upstairs and downstairs. We did 1,000 covers for dinner, and I had a big board, with the docket grabbers there, 4 levels, and I still had a pile of dockets I hadn't even called out yet. It was hell. One of the worst services I've ever done. I actually pulled down the fire doors and just said, forget it, we can't take any more.
Yeah.
It was hell.
Yeah.
I know. The language there was colourful that time, I tell you.
Oh, I can imagine. You have shifts like that, you get to the end of it, and you're just sort of sitting there just going...
Yeah. Mezzo was one of those places, you could have a beer at the end of the night, and you just sit in the corridor drinking a beer, and nobody said a word. It was
it's the silence.
It's just like
everyone's processing what just happened.
Yeah, you've been violated.
You've had work violation.
Exactly. It's just like but that was John Turot, and look at John now. He's gone on for great big things, and with his TV career and everything, smashing bloke. Yeah.
So, what are you doing next? Where are you now?
So now I consult. I've got some.
How are you finding consultancy?
It's fine, but it's not. The dream is like I'm talking to people at the moment about doing another Kabara-esque, Ruya-esque, but I think
here.
Oh yes, definitely. Well, that's the whole dream is Middle East, Levant, Arabic, Middle Eastern, whatever. They're all 3 separate entities, but if you put them all under one title, it's as good as anything there is out there. There's no doubt about it. The spices, the cooking techniques, it's just fantastic. But people don't know about it as much. And there are other elements, and certainly with Ruya, I think we, in one respect, when we moved it to London, we made a little bit of a mistake. If you're going to do a big business deal in Mayfair, and you want to be popping, £2,000 bottles of wine or whatever, do you really want to sit next to locals in full of buyers and all that? So maybe we should have had a bit more. It's a tough one. So obviously it's doing very well in London, but there's a lot of Middle Eastern, which is fantastic because it's come from here. But to pay that sort of rent, you need to,
especially
a lot of the time, we were selling more food than Rocker, for example. But obviously Rocker sells a hell of a lot more alcohol.
Yeah.
So
we make a lot more money off alcohol.
Exactly.
Because you can sit in Mayfair, you can create your brand and charge an absolute fortune, and they'll pay because they're sitting in Mayfair.
Yeah.
You can't.
So it's it really is a difficult
food
one.
prices too much. Well, you can if you deliver the service, which is always...
Which is the great thing of opening a restaurant here, because everybody blends in seamlessly. Nobody cares. And, you can be drinking and that. But when you take it overseas, it's a bit more difficult,
So how is that actually going?
Good.
Yeah?
Yeah, watch your space,
Okay, awesome. How do you see Dubai's landscape? There's a lot of conflicting opinions about what's going to happen over the next sort of 5-10 years. Some say very positive.
I would say very positive. I would say, I'm going to choose. No, this isn't controversial, but it's just the way it is.
Say what you need to say. As long as it's not a C-bomb, say what you need to say.
Mostly I'll talk about Britain, but obviously this goes for other European countries, not the Britons in Europe anymore, idiots. But
I agree.
Yeah. But there's just a massive shortage of chefs and front of house as well. Nobody wants to get into the industry because, yes, it is a very hard industry to work in.
Yeah.
No social life. And this new generation is all work-life balance. I totally respect that. I totally understand. But...
one thing I'll quickly say, the social life, one thing I say, yes, you sacrifice your social life because you work every weekend.
Yeah.
But as I have found, the social life you actually have at work is crazy.
Oh, yeah.
The nutters that you actually work with.
Back in the days in the 80s, 90s, you'd be, finish work 16 hours, you go out and party for 4, you come back in the morning with a stamp on your hand and sort of like...
go straight back to
4 hours in the same clothes.
Yeah.
And that was just the way... life was. I mean, but it was hard. Times have had to change, Do I feel sad? Yes, definitely. Because, yes, it was hard, as I said, violence, misogyny, all that. And there isn't a place for that. But it was, character building. I loved it. It was, some of the chefs I've worked for should be locked away.
But it's the can you handle this attitude?
Yeah. And even the ones that were like that. And Jason won't mind me saying, Jason was very, very tough. Everybody knows Gordon and Marco and people like this, but they can't. Everybody's had to change now, or you won't have chefs working for you. So, but to get to the top, to get to where they got to have the nice lifestyle that they have got, you can't do it wishy-washy. It's 100. You jump in both feet. It's 100%. All those guys I mentioned have worked incredibly hard to get where they are, the hard way. None of them were born with a silver spoon in their mouth or anything like that. They've worked hard and they deserve everything they get, but, maybe it's the fault of people like, Gordon and the great TV programs that they do. Chefs now say, oh, yeah, I want to be like him. But they don't particularly want to put in the footwork. They want the glory.
The shouting.
So there's no fast track in this. You cannot speed it up. And so within Britain, a lot of restaurants now, they're doing like 4-day weeks and then 3 days off so that how do you make the money to pay the rent, to do all this sort of stuff? So
how do you learn anything? It's this industry is an industry based around grafting.
Yeah,
because that's kind of what happens. Like we were talking about a kitchen going down.
Yeah,
is that when the kitchen goes down, or the bar goes down, the dispense bar goes down, or when the shift tanks.
Yeah,
right? The only way that you get out of that is by the fact that everyone knows. So now we're in the weeds, as everyone calls it, and you've just got to get on with it.
That's the polite version. Isn't it?
Yeah. That's the politically correct way of saying it. But the only way that you get out of that, because you have just got to focus, get organized, be patient, turn on your people skills, all the guests. Because if you don't, I've seen people have full-blown meltdowns where their section's gone into the weeds. They're in tears, guys.
I've seen people, certainly mezzo, people would roll up their knife case and walk out in the middle of the service.
Because it's not stopping. You've just got to have the backbone to get on with it. But like I say, it's the character building where you go, okay, that's made me appreciate the good shifts.
Yeah.
But if you've got to have a real tenacity to kind of get through the big weeds.
Once you're through it and you're sitting in the corridor drinking a beer, and then you can sit look at you have a laugh about it. That's going in the book. That's going in the book as one of the worst days of my life, but you still laugh about it.
The following day's pre-shift is, let's not have a day like yesterday.
Exactly. But, I do think, and the best thing about it, but coming back to your question, so I think the generations in Europe now are a bit more, not snowflake or anything like that, but they have other... what's the word for it? Dreams. We're so lucky that we got some fantastic people that, you know, maybe from India, Philippines, Africa, that come here. Brilliant chefs, absolutely brilliant, that don't have that luxury that some of these Europeans. They're supporting their families and everything that back home as well. So they're still working hard and putting in the graft and putting the shift in, which is what you can. So, yeah, all the great restaurants that are coming to this town, live long and prosper and all that sort of stuff. But it's the chefs that you get from those, you know, other countries here, India's and that, Philippines and that will be the future of this town. And I think it will be one of the culinary destinations of the world, because we've got now an unfair advantage. We're right in the middle.
Yeah.
We can get fantastic ingredients, certainly not what it was like in 1999. The suppliers have really raised their game. I mean, pristine ingredients you can get in this town now. Brilliant chefs, fantastic restaurants. Yeah.
Great weather, great locations.
Oh, not now. It's a bit.
Well, not now.
It's a bit warm.
It's like it's going into that period where, you know, you can't go outside. Yeah, hell.
Yeah.
Oh, man.
Yeah. But no, I think it's a very good place to be.
Well, look,
I certainly don't think about leaving.
No. So where would you go?
Yeah, I wouldn't go back to Britain.
People ask me, am I staying here forever? The bigger question is, where would you go? Like, you can go on holiday to some great places, but when you live here, you really get used to safety, cleanliness, you know, efficiency. So where I would never
safety.
Safety. I would never go back to the UK. I might go further east. You know, I think that'd be quite interesting to go and explore certain areas there, maybe. But where would you live? It's
for me,
such a great place to live.
For me,
you know,
I'm a lot older than you.
How old are you, by the way?
59 next week. So
you don't look it.
Thanks.
No problem. You know,
internally, it's shot.
You do.
Internally, it's. But it's something my wife and I talk about all the time. It's where after this, you know, it's all very nice living here now and that. But when you're retired, can you afford to live in Dubai?
Well, I think they're making it easier to do so.
I hope so, because I'm in no hurry to leave. But, you know, obviously the older you get and your private healthcare starts going ta-ta-ta-ta-ta.
Yeah.
So that's something.
Well, I
always thought Portugal, because I'm a firm believer in the Europeans.
That's the second time I've heard that. In the last, one of the managers here went to Portugal. And I've never been. And he came back going, it's an unbelievable place.
But I missed the boat. They used to, if you spent a certain amount of money on a villa or whatever, you got your residency and then you could get your passport 5 years later type of thing. So you'd still be in the European community, which I'm a firm believer of. What happened in Britain was anyway, in my opinion, the dumbest thing that any country's ever done to itself. But
they kind of went about it the wrong way. A bit backwards. Why don't you tell everyone first what might happen before you vote, instead of voting and then telling everyone what's going to happen?
And just listening to the lies that everybody put. And, you know, if personally, the amount of lies that they spoke, if that was in a trial thing, you'd get a retrial.
Yes, correct. Yeah.
Everything you said was a lie. But anyway,
that's a podcast for another day.
That is. That's just,
which we will have. You know what I mean? Because they're great. That is a great conversation, you know, to have. But yeah, it's just mad.
You just need to call it stupidity or something like that. It was anyway. It's a terrible thing.
So look, I mean, we met this morning. This conversation's been really, really good, and I didn't realise you'd done half the things that you'd actually done, because the nature of what I'm trying to do with this is we discover it along the way, kind of being recorded. One thing I did want to maybe sort of go into, sort of to maybe finish on, was Burj Al Arab.
Yeah.
Like, you just kind of just dropped that, like, sometimes I'm doing Burj Al Arab, we move straight on. But what did you do? Opening?
Yeah.
I love openings, right? I'm one of these people that loves an opening because they're just, you know, I could use every curse word ever to describe what it's like to do an opening, because it's just mad.
Yeah.
But what was it like to then open Burj Al Arab? Because, I mean, talk about iconic openings.
Yeah.
You know, like, you never seen anything like it.
It was definitely not me. I was not right for there, obviously. I probably saw more of Gerald Lawless than his wife. I was always in his office. It was very German, to be politically correct, I suppose. Everybody was in the tall white hats and clipboards. That's just not me. So I was upstairs. We didn't wear hats. We did food scores for various things. We actually beat the fine dining. I was in Almara. We actually beat, but I just didn't get on with the management. I was always...
Well, they were just too hotelled.
There was one thing happened. The executive sous chef said something to my chefs. I went to HR and called him an effing Nazi. That was not a good career move, as things go. And because he just basically looked down on my guys who were all from India and all spoke better English and far better educated than I was, to be quite honest. And I found that very offensive. And then the final straw for me, and I knew I was on my way out, was the staffing got too big, and they needed to move. So they needed to put people where the management was, which was in a Golden Sands out there instead of the staff village accommodation. And the way they figured that out is not the senior people, not the longest serving. They moved the white people out into Golden Sands because they had a higher standard of living to be expected. So me being me, I went to HR again, and he's like, "Oh, don't start calling," and I'm like, "Can you explain the rules of apartheid towers?" So I knew when that happened, I was definitely going to get sacked. And sure enough, yeah.
There you go. Well, that's proper rock.
But
sacked from Burj Al Arab.
Oh yeah. It was. They were talking to me, and then I already had a job in Madrid lined up after that, so it was a bit of a deal. You know, you don't have to sack me, I'll leave, but you relocate me to Europe. So that's what they did. So yeah, but they were already looking for a German chef to run the restaurant upstairs. So
in his big white hat.
And his clipboard. Yeah.
Well, look, this has been a brilliant conversation.
Thank you very much.
And
it's been fun.
To sort of sum it all up, because again, you've travelled many amazing places, worked in some serious big names, you know, for long periods of time, which is not someone that just floats in and out and says, "Oh, look at that on my CV." You've done your time. I would say, if there's anything left you'd like to sort of leave on the table to someone watching this that's like has those hopes and dreams and aspirations to sort of follow someone like yourself, what would you say?
Well, I was born on a council estate, you know, working class parents, very much so. Obviously on the Isle of Man, a holiday for me was going to Liverpool or somewhere like that, you know. I've seen the world. I've worked damn hard to do it. I wouldn't change a single thing about my life. I've had a real hoot, you know. And I wish other people could do that now, but there are no shortcuts. So if you're prepared to put in the hard work and that, the world is your oyster, you know, and that's it. There is no shortcuts. And it's a shame that they missed out on some of the stuff that happened in the 80s, because that's hysterical.
It's a good job there were no mobile phones around to record it all.
Oh, yeah. and some. That's what I say to my sons. It's like, I'm glad there were no mobiles when I was young, because you don't want this out there.
No.
Yeah.
No.
Yeah.
Listen, Colin Clague, thank you very much for coming on. It's been an absolute pleasure, and we'll definitely have the Brexit conversation.
Anytime.
Thank you. Thank you. Cheers.